Today, let's look at an old book, Walt Disney's The Art of Animation. Now, this edition is from late 50s, early 60s, because they were working on Sleeping Beauty at the time. And they put out this book, and it gave the public a lot of information about Disney features. So let's take a look and see. I've had this for some years now. Some animation of an owl flying from Sleeping Beauty. And this is by Bob Thomas. I read a biography of Walt Disney by Bob Thomas long ago. Research by Don Graham, one of the great Disney teachers. Here we see an animation disc with, it's like a model sheet of one of the kings from Sleeping Beauty. Here we see film cans from different movies that they made. A hand crank pencil sharpener. Pencils. I guess those are pastels. New pastels. Drawings of the kings and one of the minstrels from Sleeping Beauty. So a fascinating book. It says copyright 58. Here's a table of contents. Every different department of the studio is represented. Here we see origins of animation, moving drawings. And then we get into the first chapter, story. And here we see the great story men at Disney feature working on the picture. Bill Pete, Tom Oreb, Joe Rinaldi, Winston Hibbler, Don DeGrady, and Ken Anderson. So of these guys, I actually got to meet Ken Anderson very briefly when I was on Little Nemo, Adventures of Little Nemo in Slumberland, I guess it's called. And there we see a bunch of Disney story drawings for Sleeping Beauty. And then we started looking at the history of animation through Disney. The Steamboat Willie, The Skeleton Dance, really great film. Marrying classic music with animation. So here we see some storyboards from Snow White and some music guys here coming up with different lyrics and music. The first feature, Snow White. Lady and the Tramp, Alice in Wonderland. These guys are from Cinderella. Drawing of Pinocchio, Bambi, the mice from Cinderella. And here we're explaining different aspects of coming up with storylines. Peter Pan and Sleeping Beauty artwork. A really great book. Here's all the character breakdowns, the guys that were creating the characters. Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston looking at a color model of the fairies. How to come up with personalities. Winsor McCay, the great comic strip artist and the great first animator with Gertie the Dinosaur. Different drawings of Mickey Mouse through some of the 30s and into the 50s. Birth of Donald Duck, Donald and Three Caballeros with Jose Carioca and Panchita. Other characters in the Disney stable. These look kind of like little golden books illustrations. Three Little Pigs, a really great film. And creation of Sleeping Beauty by Tom Oreb, who was a really great designer. Worked for Tex Avery sometimes at MGM, designing some of Tex Avery's great cartoons. And the sound, which is recording people's voices. Wow, this is an old picture here. There's Ub Iwerks. And all these guys animating at Disney back in 1931. Animation of Mickey from Steamboat Willie. Different voice actors, actresses, animating. I guess that's Ollie Johnston there. Sound effects, visual effects, voices. This for these guys. The music. Someone has to write all the music for these pictures. Some more old Disney pictures that you guys should look at and study. Fantasia. Great drawings here from Fantasia. That's how the guy does the music. This is a moviola. And it's got a speaker here. Picture, 35mm film here. 35mm mag track with the sound on it. And another 35mm mag track with more sound. So probably one has sound effects and the other has music or dialogue, depending. Cut it out, you guys. Oh, here's a huge one. Look at all the reels there. So this is all sound going through that these guys are cutting sound. More great art from Sleeping Beauty. So I think there was an edition of this book earlier, but I'm not sure when. But this is the one that I found in the bookstore years and years ago. So I've had this for a long time. Explaining the different departments. This is layout, what layout does. They plan out the shot. Take care of all the perspective, get everything ready for BG Paint and for the animator. So they deal with BG Paint by drawing in the background. Camera, they deal with the camera department, telling the camera department where to move the camera field from here down to here. Deal with the animators, setting up how big the characters are, where they are, what they're doing. It's something that's more or less lost in TV animation these days, as they just go from storyboard drawings to animation. Here's an explanation of what layout does. I have a big interest in it because I like doing it when I was working on The Simpsons. Here's the multiplane camera. This gigantic camera stand shoots down through different layers of cells to give you a three-dimensional effect. This is the first animation camera used at Disney's old cartoon studio. So this is something they cobbled together out of wood. They just went down to the lumber yard, got the wood, cut it, figured out a way to hang the camera from it. This is what you do when you are figuring out what has to be done to make your equipment. Here's drawings of the multiplane camera. Big one and a smaller one. They made a horizontal multiplane camera. Now, Fleischer did a horizontal multiplane camera, and I think Ub Iwerks did one too. And you shoot horizontally through your artwork this way. And this was a gigantic field here because they started wide and they probably trucked in. So here's a setup for not how to do, but a Ken Anderson drawing, the layout drawing of the prince fighting the dragon. There's Ken Anderson in front of the storyboards. And this would probably be the layout drawing here. It says completed scene, so I guess these are the animation drawings. Man. And now we get to the animation part, which a lot of it was rotoscoped or study human action. There's Disney's animators, the nine old men. And here we see a Disney animator going over the layouts, cigarette in hand, model sheet, and exposure sheets, so you can figure out the timing to give the camera. See the animator standing at his desk, the old Disney desk there. The animator's stopwatch so you can time out his actions. Drawings by Walt Kimball of Lucifer the cat from Cinderella. This is how many different people get to work on a shot. You have an animator doing a rough extreme, and then you have an assistant animator cleaning that up. You have a breakdown artist putting in the breakdown drawings between this rough extreme and that rough extreme. And he does a breakdown drawing that goes basically in between it. And then an in-betweener putting in all the rest of the drawings. So the animator does the yellow drawings. The assistant animator cleans them up. That's the blue squares. The breakdown artist, he will go over the animation and make a rough breakdown drawing in between the big actions. And then the in-betweener will in-between all the drawings. And he probably cleans up his own drawings too. And here's how you do rotoscoping. You get the action of the guy on the horse, and then you trace it onto either paper or cell. And then you have to put it on model to the picture that you're working on. And that's how rotoscoping is done. And here's a great big shot. Prince and the princess coming down the stairwell. And here's designing characters. This is Captain Hook. Animation by Milt Kahl of the Prince from Sleeping Beauty. Look at these great drawings. So, an animator looking for a job with this gigantic portfolio. So this must be a BG painter going in looking for a job. And here the guy's looking at some animation art samples. Look like a bunch of BG paintings there. Then there's visual effects that have to be done. So many different things. Somebody has to animate the flames and the water and the sparkles. Then we get into what is limited animation. And this is when they did Toot Whistle Plunk Boom. And I think Walt Kimball directed this, and there he is sitting there as they're working on space project Mars and Beyond. BG color and paint. A whole different look for this picture, Sleeping Beauty. I remember Ray Aragon telling me that he and his buddies at Disney back in the old days called this type of painting for Lady and the Tramp Moldy Prune, because it was just so conventional. And when they did pictures like Toot Whistle Plunk Boom and Sleeping Beauty, a whole different style of drawing and painting was done. So you see it flattens out everything into a design. Instead of trying to model it in 3 dimensions, you work 2-dimensionally and make everything flat. A whole different way to think about it. And ink and paint department, people painting cells. All these women, day in, day out, working working hard painting these cells. I did some cell painting when I worked for Fred, and it is not an easy job. You're in there at 3 o'clock in the morning painting cells. Man, that is not easy. Color key. Somebody has to pick out the colors, and all that has to be integrated with the background painting and the characters and the props and everything. A lot of work. And this is Eric Larson and Walt Disney standing in the hallway looking at a bunch of artwork for Sleeping Beauty pinned up on the wall. And there's Walt. So a really great book. If you can find it in a used bookstore, grab it. You'll love it. Like I said, it's from 1958. I don't know how much it goes for these days, but there are other editions of this for the other Disney pictures that have been put out, starting with, I guess they did one for Little Mermaid and they did one for Beauty and the Beast way back in the late 80s. So anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Keep drawing and keep having fun. We'll see you next time.